Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Chapter 1. Dhritarashtra said, At Kurukshetra, field of righteousness, when Pandu's sons and mine met in the press, and all those chiefs joined in the deadly fray, what was their conduct, O Sanjaya? Say. Sanjaya said, When the Prince Duryodhana had espied the serried ranks of Pandu's sons, he hied and toward his martial teacher eager pressed, to whom the haughty prince these words addressed. O preceptor, the mighty host survey of Pandu's sons' military array, disposed in battle order by the skill of Drupad's noble son, your dear pupil. Great heroes and mighty bowmen are there, like Bhima and Arjuna, peers in war, the mighty chiefs Yuyudhan and Virat, and Drupad seated on his chariot. Drishtaketu and Chekitan behold, and holy Kashi's king gallant and bold. See Kunti Bhoj and Purujit, the most preeminent with Saibhya in the host. The valiant Uttamaujas too is there, with brave Yuddhamanyu of prowess rare. Subhadra's son, Draupadi's, join the war, each master of a mighty car. And now, O best of twice-born men, behold the chieftains on our side who have enrolled. Now hear the martial leaders whom I name, that you may be acquainted with the same. Thyself and Bhishma, Karna also see, and Kripa, who oft gains the victory, the great Vikarna, Ashwatthama too, and Somadatta's noble offspring true, and many others entering the strife, for my purpose prepared to give their life, all veterans, all true to my commands, each bearing divers weapons in their hands. Our forces are more adequate by far, whose general is Bhishma in this war, than theirs who have Bhima for general. Also their host compared with ours is small. Each warrior now in ready order stands, duly disposed in various martial bands. Ye mighty chieftains, and each gallant man, protect ye the general Bhishma in the van. Whereon, their martial vigour to renew, the grandsire of the Kauravas then blew a lion's roar on his conch to delight, and fill the host with ardour for the fight. Now conches, trumpets, kettle drums resound, and clanging gongs fills all the air around, all suddenly echoing brash and high, while noise tumultuous involves the sky. Then Madhava, and whom Pandu begot, upon a white horse-drawn war-chariot, took hold on their divine conches at last, and vigorously blew a mighty blast. On Panchajanya blew Lord Hrishikesh, upon the god bestowed blew Gurakesh, and Bhima of the awesome daring too, upon his mighty conch the Poundra blew. The Prince Yudhisthira, Kunti's son steadfast, blew on the endless victory a blast, and Nakula and Sahadeva too on the Sughosh and Mani-Pushpak blew. The dexterous archer, Kashi's prince, and he, the mighty car warrior Sikandi, Drishtadyumna and Virat on the field and Satyaki, none of whom ever yield. Drupad and Draupadi's sons of high worth, all ready stand for war, O Lord of earth. And Subhadra's dear boy of mighty arms, each blew their conches, rousing dire alarms. The sons of Dhritarashtra were aghast at that prolonged and tumultuous blast. Disconsolate, their hearts began to break, the sky re-echo, and the earth to quake. Now, when the son of Pandu had surveyed the host of Dhritarashtra's son arrayed, who, when their deadly missiles 'gan to throw, the monkey-bannered hero lifts his bow. Thereon, O king, to Hrishikesh he said, Now let, O Achyuta, the car be led halfway betwixt where both the forces contend. There halt the car, O my beloved friend, so I might have an unrestricted sight of these my foes, who in the strife delight, with whom I must contend. I would behold in this fierce war, which 'gins now to unfold. Those gathered here I would plainly observe, eager Dhritarashtra's evil son to serve. The conqueror of sleep, hight Gudakesh, addressed himself thus to Lord Hrishikesh, who on the plain did halt the mighty car halfway betwixt where both the forces were. When Krishna halted there, before him viewed Bhishma and Drona and the multitude of princes, then to Partha said, My dear, behold the hosts of Kurus gathered here. In both those hosts the son of Pandu, the son of Pritha, saw his grandsires, uncles and fathers-in-law, teachers and uncles on the mother's side, grandsons and all well-wishing friends beside. Seeing all these, the noble Kunti's son by pity and mercy was overcome, beholding all these dear friends gathered there, thus spoke, o'erwhelmed with grief and filial care. Arjuna said, O Krishna, marking here my kith and kin, eager this mortal conflict to begin, weak are my trembling limbs, my mouth is dry, the hair o'er all my body stands on high, my skin with fever burns, and from my grip I let my bow, the mighty Gandiv, slip. My giddy mind, distracted, reels unmanned, so much distressed I can no longer stand. Moreover, Keshava, I only see dread omens and a frightful augury. I do not see what welfare we might gain when we have all our dear relatives slain. Nor do I, Krishna, victory desire, nor to the honours of kingship aspire. For what to us are kingship, joy, or wealth, or Govinda, or even life itself, when they for whom we wish to gain those things, the pleasures and the joys of ruling kings, stand ready here prepared for mortal strife, forsaking wealth and pleasures, even life. Preceptors and fathers whom I revere, and with them sons and great-grandsires are here, brothers-in-law, grandsons and uncles too, and all our dearest friends exposed to view. These I could not kill, for whatever gain, even if I should be by any slain. No, not of heaven's kingship the renown, Madhusudan. What then of earthly crown? If Dhritarashtra's sons We now deprive of life, what joy could we from that derive? We shall only of sin incur the stain, Janardhan, if these wicked ones are slain. Therefore, by such conduct we would do ill, the sons of Dhritarashtra thus to kill, having, O Madhava, our kinsmen slain. How could we be happy ever again? Though these see not the wickedness and vice, their minds captivated by avarice, in destruction of the whole family, in hating friends, the base iniquity. Yet how should we, to whom these things are plain, not learn from such sinful deeds to refrain? The wrong in extirpation of the clan is obvious to us, O Janardhan. The righteous and ancient clan rituals are lost when the clan is ruined and falls. When constraints of righteousness are undone, the clan with sinfulness is overcome. When sinfulness prevails, O Krishna, then loose and corrupted become the women. When women are thus corrupted and lewd, there springs of a mixed caste a multitude. By mixing castes the clan destroyers go to suffer in hellish regions below. And the ancestral manes are sore grieved, of water, cakes, and rituals bereaved. Those evils which the clan destroyers bring, of unrighteousness and caste mingling, disrupt the great traditions of the clan, which from time immemorial began. By clan traditions no longer confined, those evil doers among all mankind, we, O Janardhan, have oft times heard tell, are consigned to perdition and to hell. Ah me, alas! Oh, what a grievous sin, which we stand ready here thus to begin, since we our own relatives would destroy to gain the privilege of kingly joy. I would prefer if Dhritarashtra's sons, all armed to point with their deadly weapons, would me, unarmed and unresisting, slay, than I should slaughter them in this affray. Sanjaya said, Arjuna thus upon the battlefield had spoken, and his mind to grief did yield. He sat him down upon the chariot seat, his bow and arrows scattered round his feet. And thus ends the first discourse of Bhagavad Gita, entitled The Dejection of Arjuna. Now, chapter 2. Sanjaya said, To him thus overcome with pious cares, disconsolate, his eyes brimming with tears, with pity smitten and anxieties, Lord Madhusudan spoke in words like these. The illustrious one said, Wherefore has this pusillanimity at this crucial juncture come over thee? A bar to heaven, inglorious, vain, which honourable men view with disdain. It is a view most unworthy, and hence do not give way to feeble impotence. Shake off weakness, shake off weak-heartedness, yourself compose, arise and fight, O scorcher of thy foes. Arjuna said, O Lord Madhusudan, wherefore should I the worthy Bhishma and Drona defy? Aiming at them with arrows is offence, who are deserving it of my reverence. I fain would not these noble teachers slay, though I be inured to beg every day, for killing them what pleasure or what good would accrue to us drenched in their dear blood? Nor do I know what is the better course, to be subdued or conquer them by force, whom if we kill while we yet still survive, in misery we should not wish to live. I am perplexed with doubts and misery. The path of righteousness I do not see. You are my teacher, seeing me distressed. Teach me, your pupil, what would be the best. For I indeed see no means of relief of this weakening and protracted grief, even if I a vast kingdom attained, nor even if heaven's kingship were gained. Sanjaya said, thus having spoken to Lord Hrishikesh, the scorcher of foemen, Gudakesh, said to Govinda, to fight I will not, and silent sat down on the chariot. To him, disconsolate and sore distressed, Hrishikesh, mildly smiling, him addressed, and thus, O Bharat, these words did declare, halfway between where both the armies were. The illustrious one said, you grieve, Arjuna, where no grief should rise, yet speak the learned language of the wise. For those endued with wisdom feel no pain, if souls should pass away or here remain. There never was a time when I or you existed not, nor these kings you defy, and none of us that you here this day see can ever in the future cease to be. E'en as the bodied soul assumes each stage of childhood, youth, and finally old age, new bodies takes and casts the old away. At this the truly wise feel no dismay. O son of Kunti, perceptions we feel as scorching heat or cold, and woe and weal, are transitory states that will not last. Therefore, O son of Bharat, be steadfast. Whoso is not afflicted by these pains, enjoys, O best of men, sober remains. Who always observes equanimity, indeed may conceive immortality. Whatever is can never cease to be. What never was has no reality. The knowers of the truth know this as true, observing the distinction twixt the two. Know thus this soul is indestructible, existing everywhere, pervading all. There is nothing by which it can be slain, since it does always immortal remain. These bodies come and go, and ne'er abide, wherein the soul immortal does reside, immutable and beyond measure's gauge. Therefore arise, Bharat, in fight engage. Whoso considers that the soul can slay, or that it is killed, know not what they say, for both of them are with ignorance filled. He does not kill, and never can be killed. This soul is never born and never dies, and having come to be, it always is, thus birthless, eternal, immutable, ancient, though killed, not killed though you the body kill. Whoso perceives this soul, immutable, eternal, birthless, imperishable, whom can he kill or have killed? Or again, how could he be the cause of any slain? Just as a person discards garments worn, and does with new attire himself adorn, and so too the soul, dwelling within the flesh, throws off old forms to dwell in bodies fresh. This soul by weapons can never be rent, nor by the heat of raging fire brent. Water cannot drench it, nor from the sky can mighty blowing winds cause it to dry. Indivisible, incombustible, of being drenched or dried, incapable, eternal and permeating all space, ancient, immovable, and firm in place, ineffable, beyond conception's range, 'tis not an evolute subject to change. Thus is it said of the soul, be content, which knowing you have no cause to lament. Now, even if you hold the view that says, this soul is always born and always dies, O mighty armed, if this be your belief, then for this soul you have no cause for grief. Since for the newborn death must sure ensue, and those who death o'ercomes are born anew. With the inevitable be content, for thus you have no reason to lament. At first all beings are unmanifest, and only in the middle stand confessed, and finally unmanifest again, for whom and why should you lament for them? As wonderful some view this living soul, as wonderful another doth extol. As wonderful one hears of him, e'en so none, even hearing, even having heard, his essence know. These souls that in the mortal body dwell are all alike deathless and eternal. For any creature, therefore, you have not a cause or reason to lament their lot. And moreover, consider what is due, in pious duty what is right for you, since for a martial prince there nothing is more pious than a battle such as this. A prince to whom occasion doth afford a war like this, come of its own accord, is happy, parter, and attains that state where he finds flung wide open heaven's gate. Now if, however, you this fight refuse, you will thereby your reputation lose. If you from incumbent duty refrain, you shall only of sin incur the stain. The people will speak openly beside, and tell of your infamy and vain pride, and for one who has greatly honoured been, far worse than death is loss of high esteem. These mighty car warriors gathered here will think that you had fled the fight through fear, though you by them had well respected been, of little worth they shall your prowess deem. Your enemies will mock you with abuse, and decry you with speech they ought not use, and denigrate your prowess. Oh, the shame! What could be greater misery or pain? If slain, you shall to heaven straightway go; if victor, shall enjoy kingdom below. Therefore, O Kunti's son, resolve aright. As duty bids, rouse up yourself and fight. Regard all states with equanimity, in joy and sorrow, loss or victory. Prepare to fight the fight that does ensue, and no taint of sin shall to you accrue. The analytic way, thus you have heard, of knowledge by the intellect conferred. With this intellection, O Prita's son, the bonds of diverse actions are undone. The undertaking of this righteous way is unattended with loss or decay, and e'en the slightest knowledge of these things from the great mortal fear salvation brings. Upon this path, O Kuru's noble son, the resolve of the intellect is one, but branching in endless diversity are resolutions of the unsteady. Those whose speech blossoms forth in flowery words, of Vedic doctrines, promising rewards. In ignorance they zealously proclaim, O Partha, that there is no higher gain. Their hearts full of impetuous desire, by rituals to heaven they aspire, and articles of dogma multiply for pleasures, lordship, and prosperity. To pleasures and to lordship fondly bound, which all the mental faculties confound, that resolution requisite denies, upon which contemplative thought relies. The Vedic texts deal with the gunas three. Beyond the three gunas, Arjuna, be. Beyond the pairs of opposites and pure, indifferent and self-possessed and sure. In regions where the flooding waters swell, there is no necessity of a well. Likewise, there is no need for Brahmins wise of Vedic texts that treat of sacrifice. You have the right to act, but not the use, at any time, of fruits the acts produce. Act not for gain of fruitful recompense, nor be attached to passive indolence. Your acts in yoga contemplation do, O Dhananjaya, attachments eschew, becoming equipoised, whate'er befall, in failure or success, I yoga call. For motivated action is by far to intellection much inferior. In refuge of the intellect remain, they misers are who only act for gain. To intellection, whoso is resolved, actions or good or evil are absolved. Therefore yourself to such yoga apply, in yoga actions reach dexterity. The wise by intellection do forswear the subsequent fruits that their actions bear. Of rebirth in this world, free from the chains, they repair to that realm beyond all pains. Thus when your intellectual faculty transcends bewilderment's impurity, complacently you shall be unperturbed by what has been or what ought to be heard. Your understanding now is sore distressed by many doctrines diversely expressed. But when your intellect does firm remain, contemplative, you shall yoga attain. Arjuna said, what are the signs, O Keshava, of those who in contemplation their minds compose? How do the steady contemplatives talk? How do they sit at ease? And how do they walk? The illustrious one said, whoever, Partha, forsakes all desires, whereto the mind incessantly aspires, who is contented with the self alone, as one with steady wisdom should be known, whose mind is unperturbed by sore distress, who does not crave for worldly happiness, from passion and from fear and anger free, such an one is firm-minded said to be, who is not overwhelmed with fondness glad, whatever doth befall, or good or bad, who is not joyed or with hatred appalled, as one of steady wisdom should be called. Just as a turtle draws in on each side, and doth within its shell its members hide, e'en so whoever the senses restrains, fixed in steady wisdom always remains. For sense perceptions lose much of their charm to one constrained by fasts and abstention, but of their taste there clings a residue, till one gains of the Lord a direct view. Even the wise, O Kunti's son, when they control their minds, are yet still led astray. So turbulent the mind and senses are, that efforts to subdue them often mar. To curb all these, yourself firmly commit. Meditate on me while at ease you sit. For one who thus controls the senses all, as one established in wisdom I call. That man to brooding sense his mind allows, their objects finds, there soon attachment grows. From this attachment springs ardent desire. Desire frustrated results in ire. From ire one is into confusion tossed. and thus confused, the memory is lost. From memory's loss the intellect is foiled. Sans intellect, all is ruined and spoiled. But who the roving senses can restrain, from sense objects doth self-controlled remain, unfettered by extremes of love and hate, and thence achieves of grace the blessed state. When in that state of grace the soul enjoys complacence that all misery destroys, and soon the intellectual faculty is stablished in mental serenity. For whom the intellect remains untaught, there is no chance of contemplative thought. Sans contemplation, how can there be peace? And without peace, where is true happiness? Whichever way the wayward senses go, the restless mind can do naught but follow, whereby wisdom is all scattered and lost, just like a ship in raging tempests tossed. Therefore, O you of mighty arms, that soul whose wayward senses brings under control the senses from their objects well restrained, such an one has steady wisdom attained. That which to all creatures appears as night, the wakened soul sees as in broad daylight, and that to which all beings wake and rise is perceived as darkest night to the wise. For that wise sage shall soon attain to peace, for whom sense objects effect no increase, but not the one whom sense objects enslaves, who for the objects of the senses craves, as rivers disembogue into the deeps, the ocean still its wonted level keeps. That person who no longer doth aspire to pleasures wanders free from all desire, freed from possessiveness and vanity, such an one attains to serenity. O Partha, this the Brahmi state is styled, attaining which one is no more beguiled, and whoso e'en at death steady remains, unto the Brahma Nirvana attains. Thus ends chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita. Now, chapter 3. Arjuna said, If, O Janardhan, your opinion be that thus the contemplative faculty does efficacy of actions exceed, why then enjoin on me this horrid deed? The ambiguous statements you have made seems to have left my intellect dismayed. Tell me only one thing and definite, whereby I may attain the blessed state. The illustrious one said, Here in this world conviction is twofold, as I, my sinless one, have erst extolled. The yoga knowledge for the learned sage, and works in which the yogins do engage. No one to inaction ever attains, who merely from performing acts abstains, nor simply by renouncement of all deeds to contemplation's perfection proceeds. For verily no creature e'er can be inactive even momentarily, since the nature-born qualities compel all souls to act, even against their will. For whoso seeks the senses to control, while brooding on sense objects, is a fool. Whoso their faith outwardly exhibits, are called false and pretentious hypocrites. But whoso, Arjuna, the mind subdues, and unattached karma yoga pursues, whose sense organs to action does apply, to works, that one excels most certainly. In acts engage, for action is by far to inactivity superior. If you from all activity refrain, you cannot even your body maintain. The whole world is bound by activities, excepting those performed for sacrifice. Then with that purpose, O son of Kunti, engage in this action, attachments free. In ancient days, when having created creatures and sacrifice, the great God said, "By this increase your kind and multiply. This shall for you be the cow of plenty. Ye shall with these rites the gods entertain, and they in turn shall benefits maintain. By mutual regard and pious care ye shall attain the ultimate welfare. The gods, worshipped with sacrificial rites, shall bestow upon you your fond delights." He is a thief who of their gifts partakes, with no offering of sacrifice makes. The good subsist on sacred offering, and thereby are released from taint of sin. But sinners who eat only for the sake of self-indulgence of mere sin partake. From food all beings are produced, and then the food itself is produced from the rain. Rain comes by sacrificial offerings, and rites of sacrifice from action springs. Know that from Brahman arises all deeds. Brahman from the immutable proceeds. Therefore the all-pervading Brahman stays, established in acts of sacrifice always. The wheel of life in motion set revolves. Who acts in contravention thus involves his life in sin, pleasures eager to gain, O Prita's son, and lives his life in vain. But who in self alone is gratified, who with the self alone is satisfied, who is content with pleasures that ensue from self alone, has nothing here to do. That one from duty has nothing to gain or lose if he should from duty abstain, nor does he on any creature depend whatever to achieve his purposed end. Therefore, attachments free, always perform acts with which your prescribed duties conform. For verily those who in acts engage without attachment reach the highest stage. Of old Janak and other princes great by work alone attained the perfect state. Considering the public benefit, you should also yourself to works commit. The pious conduct by the great pursued is emulated by the multitude, and princes by their good example show the way by which the common people go. O Partha, there is nothing to be gained by me, nor anything yet unattained. In all three worlds yet I myself conform to convention, and my duty perform. Moreover, Partha, if I ceased to be vigilantly engaged in my duty, mankind would be by me led quite astray, since men follow my path in every way. If I act not, nor heed stern duty's call, these worlds would into utter ruin fall. The castes would be commingled and alloyed, and I the cause of beings thus destroyed. Even as the unlearned work pursue, bound by fond hopes of pleasures to ensue, so too Bharat the wise with pious care, detached, act only for the world's welfare. The wise should not the ignorant confound, who work with fond attachment firmly bound, nay rather he should them to work encourage, by good example and in works engage. Nature through her three attributes effects diverse activities in all respects, but this the self-deluded little heeds, and thinks, I am the author of my deeds. But those acquainted with reality perceive the functions of the gunas three, and their divisions. Thus, O mighty armed, since gunas interact, they are not bound. But those whom nature's attributes confound act by the influence of gunas bound. Those who are wise, in knowledge consummate, should not the dull and foolish agitate. With your actions unto me resigned, on the self concentrating in your mind, becoming free from hopes and ego sense, your fever cured, then let battle commence. Those of mankind who practice constantly this doctrinal opinion taught by me, without envy, who faithfully receive, they too release from action's bonds achieve. But as for those who my teaching despise, who follow not but only criticize, know them deluded and to wisdom blind, who ruin thus the faculty of mind. Even the man of wisdom, though he tries to curb the senses, with nature complies. All beings their own nature thus pursue. What can, therefore, restraint of senses do? As far as sense and sense objects relate, inherent in them are both love and hate. Let none, therefore, be subject to their sway. These are the impediments on the way. More blessed in one's own duty to conform, though skilled in others' duty to perform. The blessed is he who in his duty dies, in others' duty fear and danger lies. Arjuna said, how now, O Vrishni's son, is man impelled to sinful deeds, seeming by force compelled, as if prompted against his will to be engaged in deeds of vile iniquity? The illustrious one said, it is desire, yea, it is anger too, and does from nature's restive mode ensue, consuming all of great iniquity. Know this on earth to be man's enemy. As fire is covered by a smoky cloud, as dust and dirt a shiny mirror shroud, and as the fetus in the womb is sealed, in like manner is that by this concealed. By this is hid the wisdom of the wise, e'en as the worst of deadly enemies. Indeed, O Kunti's son, it is desire, unquenchable like flames of raging fire. The places it abides are said to be the senses, the mind, and the faculty of intellect, and through these it dispels wisdom of he who in the body dwells. Therefore, O best of Bharats, first subdue the senses and this sinful thing eschew, which is the certain cause of destruction of the true knowledge and divine wisdom. Sense organs are superior by degree to the sense objects, so the wise decree. Superior to both of these is mind, above the mind the intellect refined, and next in order, higher than them all, is he, the conscious and immortal soul. Thus, knowing him, highest in dignity, let the self in the self established be, and thus, O mighty armed, conquest pursue of desire, the foe hard to subdue. And thus ends chapter 3. Now, chapter 4. The illustrious one said, this yoga eternal was by me shown to Vivaswan. Vivaswan made it known to Manu, and from Manu in his turn the king Ikshvaku did this yoga learn. This yoga, handed down from ancient time, was known to wise kings in unbroken line. Thus foe tormentor yoga was conveyed, but in the lapse of time it has decayed. That same yoga is taught today by me. To you, which is the highest mystery, this ancient knowledge I to you obtend, because you are my devotee and friend. Arjuna said, much later is thy birth, O Lord divine, than Vivaswan, born in the ancient time. How is it possible to comprehend 'twas thou that did this yoga first commend? The illustrious one said, O Arjuna, both you and I have passed innumerable lifetimes in the past. As for myself, I am aware of all those births you are unable to recall. Although I am birthless, immutable, the ruler of beings, ineffable, yet entering my nature I take birth by my own will and manifest on earth. Whenever righteousness diminishes, when prominent and vice and wickedness, Then but righteousness to suscitate, I do in my own person incarnate, the pious to reclaim and to destroy the wicked ones who cause such great annoy. Righteousness to establish and attest, I make myself in each age manifest. And whoso knows this mystery of mine, the nature of my birth and deeds divine, leaving the body is not born again, but does, O Arjuna, to me attain. Those from passion and fear and anger free take refuge and engross themselves in me. Purged in the cleansing fire of this wisdom, unto me thus full many souls have come. In whatever way men seek me to gain, responsive I their worship entertain. Thus, Partha, I respond accordingly, since men follow my path in every way. Those here who worship of the gods maintain, fulfillment of their actions soon attain, for swiftly in the world from action springs accomplishment of man's undertakings. According to three attributes innate and actions, I the fourfold caste create. Though I am the agent, nevertheless I am immutable and actionless. No action ever my being pollutes, nor do I cherish hopes for action's fruits. And who has knowledge of me thus in truth, also remains unbound by acts, forsooth. Knowing me thus, the men of old indeed performed actions in order to be freed. You too should act and emulate their ways, as did the ancients in the olden days. What action and inaction are, per se, even the wise, bewildered, cannot say. Wherefore what action is I will explain, whence freedom from all ill you will attain. 'Tis needful to know of the distinction twixt action, inaction, and malaction. The ways of action's use, purpose, and end are very difficult to understand. Who in inaction action comprehends, and action in inaction apprehends. Among mankind wise and attuned is he, albeit he performs activity. And whoever acts without hankering, disinterested in his undertaking, he is a wise man who with wisdom's fire burns up all worldly extraneous desire. Casting desire for action's fruit aside, on none relying, ever satisfied, though acting according to duty's call, it is as though he does nothing at all. Unambitious and self-controlled and free, forsaking all his worldly property, no stain of sin in his action contracts, since it is merely the body which acts. Contented with what comes by chance is he, from malice free, above duality, whom failure and success do not confound, equanimous, though acting, he's not bound. Who all worldly attachments has o'ercome, whose consciousness is stablished in wisdom, who acts for sacrifice and thus resolved, has all his actions utterly absolved. To him the offering, the sacred ghee, the fire, the priest, are all divinity, who sees Brahman in all of them and knows his acts are in Brahman, to Brahman goes. Some yogins, devout, pious votaries, in sacrifice worship divinities, and others to the fire of Brahman bring their devout sacrificial offering. The senses, such as hearing, some consign in worship to the fire of discipline, yet others the sense objects consecrate into the fire of sense to dedicate. Yet others offer up with pious care sense faculties into the vital air. Through fire lit by wisdom without taint, they practice the yoga of self-restraint. And others who sacrifice their substance of wealth practice yoga with hard penance. Others by Vedic study sacrifice to wisdom, strict in their austerities. Yet others consecrate the breath inhaled in respiration to the breath exhaled, and thus the vital force within restrain, and regulation of the breath maintain, and others who their diet regulate, the vital force and functions consecrate. All these knowers to sacrifice are fain, and by such sacrifice are purged of stain. Those who of sacrificial food partake, to eternal Brahman their way betake. This world is not for those, O Kuru's lord, who offer not what of the other world. Thus sacrifice in divers forms is made, and at the mouth of supreme Brahman laid. And you should know they all from action spring, which knowing shall to you salvation bring. O foe tormentor, wisdom far exceeds the sacrifice of substance and of deeds. O preacher's son, who wisdom cultivates, in wisdom finds all action culminates. To learn of this, 'tis meet you should repair, and with prostration serve with pious care, and question those who are in wisdom wise, and they will guide and teach you wisdom's ways. O Pandu's son, when this wisdom you gain, you shall not be deluded e'er again, and by this practice you shall plainly see all beings in the self in me. Even among men of iniquity, if you the worst of sinful men should be, still in the boat of wisdom you may cross this sea of sin without nor scathe nor loss. As blazing fire that fuel does produce, the fuel consumed to ashes doth reduce, so, Arjuna, doth wisdom's fire burn all actions up, and into ashes turn. Truly, like wisdom there is nothing here, for purification that may compare. Whoso in this perfection doth attain, in due time the bliss of the self will gain. The faithful, who their senses well restrain, unto this divine wisdom soon attain, and gaining this wisdom with perfect ease, without delay, achieve the supreme peace. But ignorant and faithless doubters go to utter ruination, fraught with woe. They have no portion in this world nor there, nor can happiness be the doubter's share. But who disinterested yoga maintains, his doubts are all cut away, wisdom attains, and self-controlled, O you of who treasures win, he is not bound by action or by sin. Therefore, Bharat, through ignorance prevails the gnawing doubt your bosom now assails. In yoga fixed, with wisdom's sword, cut down this ignorance, arise and win renown. Thus ends the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Now, chapter 5. Arjuna said, Again, Krishna, 2 ways he prays at once, in action to engage or to renounce. Now deign to tell me which of these is best, in confirmation that I may be blessed. The illustrious one said, The renouncement of acts or the pursuit both lead to the blessedness absolute. But of the 2, pursuit of acts exceeds more than the renunciation of deeds. Whoso has neither desire nor hate should be known as a true renunciate. O mighty armed, beyond duality, he is with joy and ease from bondage free. 'Tis only the puerile and fools that prate, and not the wise that differentiate twixt Sankhya and Yoga, but the astute, who follows one picks of both ways the fruit. The regions which the Sankhyas do attain, the Yoga practitioners also gain, and who perceives the unity of these, beholding their oneness, he truly sees. O mighty armed, it is only with pain sans yoga to renunciation gain, but that wise sage who to yoga adheres, without delay to the Brahman repairs. The pure-hearted, who with yoga endued, with self-controlled, and with senses subdued, who sees all beings in the self remain, though acting, he is free from taint or stain. The wise who know the truth should hold this view: I am the agent not of what I do. And while he hears or sees or apprehends odours and touch, or eats or sleeps or wends, breathes or speaks, gives or takes or replies, or when he opens and closes his eyes, he realizes, as a matter of fact, the senses with their objects interact. Who offering of acts to Brahman makes, and who all his fond attachments forsakes, is not assailed by sin or touched by grief, as water is repelled by lotus leaf. The yogin, with body, senses and mind, and the intellect to action consigned, he, unattached, performs activity, in order to attain self-purity. Who is attuned, unattached to the fruit of acts, attains supreme bliss absolute. The unattuned, desirous of gain, bound firmly to the fruits of acts remain. But who with self-control and steady mind to renunciation his acts consigned, he neither acts nor to action compels, and happy in the town of 9 gates dwells. The great Lord, from whom all this world proceeds, performs nor action nor impels to deeds. For him no fruit of action is adduced, since these are by man's own nature produced. The great Lord does not accept nor contract the sin of any or the pious act. It is but ignorance that wisdom veils, through which it is that all creatures beguiles. But who by knowledge has ignorance quelled, whose ignorance of the self is dispelled, perceives wisdom as manifested light, the truth supreme shining as the sun bright. Absorbed in him by intellect and soul, steadfast in him, with him for cherished goal, they go to regions whence never again return they here, washed of all sin and stain. The learned, with humility endued, maintains an equanimous attitude. A Brahmin mild, cow, dog, elephant too, and outcast, the wise see with equal view. Whose mind in equanimity remains, the conquest here of birth and death attains. Who with pure Brahman gain similitude, are thence established in beatitude, not overjoyed at the agreeable, nor depressed by the disagreeable, whose intellect undeluded remains. He knows Brahman, and to Brahman attains. Who, unattached to outward contacts is, who of the self within tastes of the bliss, whose self attuned with Brahman e'er remains, enjoys a happiness that never wanes. The pleasures which do from sense contact grow are verily the source of pain and woe. They have their beginnings and endings too, and hence the wise do not these joys pursue. But who can hear, endure, and tolerate, while in the mortal and bodily state, and is not by desire and wrath consumed, he is a happy man, and well attuned. The man who takes his pleasure from within, and joys in his inner light, this yogin attains to Brahma Nirvana's repose, and to the blissful state of Brahman goes. The wise, who Brahma Nirvana attain, and cleanse thereby of sin and the taint of stain, whose doubts are cleft, whose senses are controlled, are into the bliss of Brahman enrolled. Those wise ascetics, with self restrained from desire and wrath, have thus attained control of mind, and wander without care, and find the bliss of Brahman everywhere. When all contacts external he forgoes, his concentrated gaze between the brows, the inward and the outward breath restrains, and equal balance of the breath maintains, whose senses, mind, and intellect engage, intent on liberation, that wise sage, who does his fear and anger subjugate, enjoys always the liberated state. Who know me as the one who takes delight in penance and in sacrificial rite, and of all the mighty ruler and the friend, he does unto the supreme bliss ascend. Thus ends chapter 5 of Bhagavad Gita. Now chapter 6. The illustrious one said, who acts, performs as duty does require, without for the subsequent fruit desire, he is a renouncer and yogin hight, not he who does not act or fire light. This renunciation is said to be attuned with yoga. This learn thou from me, since no one can become a yogin true, who does not worldly ambition eschew. For the wise sage who to yoga aspires, 'tis said the means is action sans desires. But who to yoga's height has gained ascent, the means is an equanimous content. When he attachment for sense objects breaks, and all worldly activity forsakes, renouncing every desire for gain, the lofty heights of yoga doth attain. Let each self then the self by self upraise, but let him not the self by self debase, for self alone is of the self the friend, the self also a foe who may contend. The self is the friend of the self for him, who by the self has conquered been. But for the self that is unconquered, know, the self alone is of the self the foe. But who serenely has the self subdued, attains the supreme self's beatitude. In heat and cold, in pleasure and in pain, sees honor and dishonor as the same. Who with knowledge and wisdom is endued, remaining firm and with senses subdued, such yogin well attuned is said to be, who pebbles, stone, and gold as equal see. Who well-wishers, friends, and enemies too, strangers and kin behold with equal view, a holy man and sinner unredeemed, as foremost among yogins should be deemed. The yogin thus his mind should concentrate, and on the self constantly meditate. Alone and in a place secluded he will contemplate, from all desire free, established in a place well cleaned and neat, not raised too lofty nor too low a seat, with pelt and cloth and kusha grass o'erspread, and in yoga practice dedicated. Thereon the mind should concentrated be, restrained from sensual activity, in steady posture, practicing control of senses for the cleansing of the soul. With steady posture he should meditate, sitting with body, neck, and head held straight, not glancing here and there, and continent, gazing on the tip of the nose intent. The soul thus pacified and free from fear, steady in vows of continence sincere, let him thus deep meditation maintain, and in communion with me e'er remain. In constant bliss of soul the yogin joined, and gaining mastery over the mind, in the state of supreme peace doth repose, and to my own divine region he goes. Who eats too much, too little, cannot be, in truth, O dear Arjuna, a yogi, and neither he who ever wakeful keeps, nor he who when he should be wakeful sleeps. But who eating, play, and work regulate, and who all their endeavours moderate, are regular in sleep and wakefulness, attain yoga that wipes out all distress. Now when his mind the yogin well restrains, his soul the transcendental state attains, free from desire, by senses not beguiled, as well attuned is such a yogin styled. Just as a lamp, when in a sheltered spot, burns with a steady flame, and flickers not, so the yogin with mind under control is fixed in meditation on the soul. When in that state serene the mind reposed, and to yoga practice fondly disposed, the self within the self is then descried, and resting in the self is satisfied. He then the final supreme bliss conceives, which intellect, not the senses, perceives, and knowing this, of joy divine partakes, stablished in truth, which he then ne'er forsakes. And having repose in that state achieved, he weens nothing better could be conceived. Wherein he doth firm and steady remain, he is unshaken by severest pain. This thou, the meditative state, should know, which drives away all misery and woe. With firm resolve, undeviating mind, all his hopes and aspirations resigned, the senses by the mind controlled must be by regulated practice constantly. Then little by little he will restrain, and by intellection steadiness gain. Thinking of nothing else, he should control his mind and contemplate upon the soul. Where'er the mind, restless, unfixed, may stray, it must by discipline be drawn away from its roving and brought back again, and under the soul's firm control remain. The yogin, with his mind thus pacified, and with supreme bliss highly gratified, undisturbed by passion, through discipline attains to Brahman, purified of sin. The yogin thus self-disciplined will be, free from the stain of all iniquity, and touched by transcendental happiness, revels in supreme joy and endless bliss. All beings in the self, whoever sees, and the self dwelling in all entities, who thus behold with all with an equal view, he is a yogin, well attuned and true. Whoever so perceives me everywhere, also observes all things in me inhere. To him I cannot ever cease to be, nor can that one ever be lost to me. The yogin thus who worships me always, who all with singular vision surveys, who sees how all things within me abide, that yogin does always in me reside. Who sees, as with himself, in others too, everywhere with an equanimous view, their joys and pleasures are with his the same, is worthy of a perfect yogin's name. Arjuna said, "This yoga, Madhusudan, you now teach, of equanimity with your fair speech. How I might practice this I do not see, because of mental instability. The mind, O Krishna, is a restless thing, obstinate, strong, and always wavering. To curb its impetuousness I find harder than to contain the wayward wind." The illustrious one said, "O mighty aunt, the mind is certainly hard to subdue, O dear son of Kunti, but by right practice the mind can be tamed, and by habit of dispassion restrained. But he to yoga struggles to attain, who does not his mind and senses restrain. But he who strives by means appropriate and self-controlled achieves the blissful state." Arjuna said, "Who has faith, but whose mind is turned away from yoga practices, has he no stay? Who perfect in yoga has failed to be, O Krishna, what will be his destiny? And having failed in both, is he deprived of the good that from practice is derived? O mighty aunt, like a cloud blown away, and from the path of Brahman led astray? May you, O Krishna, graciously dispel this doubt that doth within my bosom dwell, for none other than you, O Lord divine, can dissipate this gnawing doubt of mine." the illustrious one said. In this life or in the next, O Prita's son, he suffers neither loss nor destruction. He never to an evil fate proceeds, who has performed auspicious pious deeds. The yogin who had failed to perfect be, attains to realms of pious felicity, and dwelling there for a protracted span, is born again into a noble clan. Or, haply, he may take again his birth in a family of yogins on earth. A birth like this, however, I declare, here in this world is exceedingly rare. And there when such a birth again he takes, his previous intellection awakes, and then, O Kuru's joy, he strives amain for that perfection which he sought to gain. By that same former habit he is led, and involuntarily attracted, and by eager inquiry he knows the word of Brahman, and to Brahman goes. The yogin, thus engaged assiduously, is utterly cleansed of impurity, perfection gains when many births have passed, and reaches the transcendent state at last. The yogin has achieved a greater height than the man of wisdom and anchorite, and excels the man of activity. Therefore, O Arjuna, a yogin be. Among all these yogins, he far excels, whose dedicated soul upon me dwells, who in worship of me with faith is blessed. I ween he is the most attuned and best. And thus ends chapter 6 in Srimad Bhagavad Gita.